Hey, where do you think you're going?
I'm a pilot. I'm heading to my flight.
A pilot? Since when do they let people like you fly planes?
I'm a captain. Here are my credentials.
Those look fake to me. Hands behind your back now.
Captain Robert Edwards walked through Terminal A at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport on a Tuesday morning in October, wearing the Continental Airways uniform he had earned through 12 years of flying and 5 years as a captain. He was heading to his flight, a morning departure to Phoenix that he had piloted dozens of times before. His federal pilot's license was in his wallet. His captain's wings were pinned to his chest. His name tag identified him clearly. Everything about his appearance said professional airline pilot, because that's exactly what he was. But security officer Scott Warren, who had been working at the airport for exactly 2 weeks, saw a black man in a pilot's uniform and immediately assumed it was fake. Warren stopped Edwards in the middle of the terminal, demanded to know where he was going, and when Edwards calmly explained he was a pilot heading to his flight, Warren responded with a question that would end his career. Since when do they let people like you fly planes? And when Edwards presented his valid federal pilot's license and Continental Airways ID, Warren looked at them, declared them fake, and arrested Edwards for impersonation in front of dozens of passengers whose phones captured every second of what happened next. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Let me know in the comments, what city or country are you watching from? What security officer Scott Warren didn't know was that the man he had just arrested was indeed a captain with 12 years of experience and 5 years in command. That Warren's supervisor, Chief Security Officer Patricia Lee, knew Captain Edwards personally from seeing him pass through the terminal hundreds of times over 18 years. That Warren's own security Bodycam was recording every word, including his racist statement that would be played in depositions and used as evidence in a federal lawsuit. That the airport's security cameras were capturing the incident from 4 different angles with timestamps synchronized to the second. That 3 passengers had pulled out their phones and were recording the confrontation from different positions in the terminal. And that Warren's pattern of stopping minority employees and passengers, 4 incidents in 14 days, all people of color, all legitimate travelers or staff, would be discovered when his supervisor reviewed his employment file and realized the arrest of Captain Edwards wasn't an isolated mistake, but the continuation of systematic racial profiling that had been documented but not addressed. Robert Edwards grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. His father, Captain Thomas Edwards, had flown for Delta Airlines for 30 years before retiring in 2015. Robert had grown up watching his father put on the pilot's uniform every morning, listening to stories about navigating through thunderstorms over the Atlantic and landing planes safely in conditions that would have grounded less experienced pilots. When Robert was 16, his father gave him advice that would define his career and save him from losing his composure 18 years later. His father, a retired airline captain with 30 years at Delta, had taught him early, when someone questions your authority, don't argue. Show your credentials, state the facts clearly, and let their mistakes speak for themselves. Anger clouds judgment. Professionalism wins every time. Robert took his first flight lesson at 17. He earned his private pilot's license at 19 while studying aerospace engineering at the University of Tennessee. By 23, he had his commercial pilot's license and was flying regional routes for a commuter airline. By 26, he had enough hours to apply to the major carriers. Continental Airways hired him in 2012 at age 26. He spent his first 7 years as a first officer, sitting in the right seat, learning from captains who had decades more experience. He studied weather patterns, memorized emergency procedures, and accumulated thousands of flight hours across every condition imaginable. In 2019, at age 33, he was promoted to captain. The 4 gold stripes on his sleeves represented years of training, hundreds of check rides, and the airline's confidence that he could command a commercial aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers safely from departure to destination. By October 2024, Captain Robert Edwards had logged over 8,000 flight hours. He had flown through Hurricane Ida's outer bands, landed safely at Denver during a blizzard that grounded half the flights that day, and handled an engine failure over the Gulf of Mexico with such calm professionalism that passengers didn't realize anything was wrong until they were safely on the ground. He was, by every measure that mattered in aviation, an exceptional pilot. On October 22, 2024, Edwards arrived at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport at 8:15 a.m. He had just returned from a 10-day vacation visiting his parents in Chicago. It was his first real break in 8 months, and he had spent the time catching up with family, sleeping in, and intentionally not thinking about flight schedules or weather briefings. Now he was back, refreshed and ready to fly. His first flight was scheduled to depart at 10:30 a.m., a routine morning departure to Phoenix that he had piloted at least 50 times before. He walked through Terminal A with his flight bag over his shoulder, wearing his Continental Airways captain's uniform exactly as regulations required. Navy blue jacket with 4 gold stripes on each sleeve, white dress shirt, black tie with the airline's insignia, captain's wings pinned above his left breast pocket, name tag on his right side, Captain R. Edwards. At 8:34 a.m., Edwards was walking past gate A-18 when security officer Scott Warren saw him. Warren was 27 years old and had been working as an airport security officer for exactly 14 days. He had been hired as part of a new wave of security personnel brought on to handle increased passenger volume at DFW. He had completed the standard 2-week training program that covered identifying suspicious behavior, responding to emergencies, and understanding terminal procedures. In those 14 days, Warren had developed a confidence that wasn't justified by his limited experience. He had walked the terminal dozens of times. He had seen pilots and flight crews moving through the concourse, and he had convinced himself that he now knew who belonged and who didn't. Warren had never seen Robert Edwards before because Edwards had been on vacation for Edwards' entire 2-week employment. But Warren didn't know that. All Warren saw was a black man in a pilot's uniform with captain's stripes, and something about it triggered his assumptions. Warren's brain made calculations that had nothing to do with evidence and everything to do with bias. He had worked here 2 weeks. He knew the pilots. He didn't recognize this man. Therefore, the uniform must be fake. It was the kind of logic that ignored every reasonable explanation, that pilots work in rotating shifts, that people take vacations, that it was impossible to know everyone at an airport this size in just 2 weeks, and jumped straight to a conclusion rooted in the assumption that a black man in a captain's uniform couldn't be legitimate. Warren stepped directly into Edwards' path. "Hey, stop! Where do you think you're going?" Edwards looked up from his phone, where he had been checking the weather forecast for Phoenix. He saw a security officer standing in front of him with an aggressive posture and an expression that made it immediately clear this wasn't a friendly greeting. "I'm a pilot," Edwards said calmly. "I'm heading to my flight." Warren's expression hardened. "A pilot? Since when did they let people like you fly planes?" Edwards felt something cold settle in his chest. He had experienced microaggressions before. Passengers who looked surprised when he walked to the cockpit, flight attendants who assumed he was a first officer even after 5 years as captain, gate agents who asked for his credentials more often than they asked white pilots. But this was different. This was explicit. Edwards kept his voice steady, remembering his father's advice. Professionalism wins every time. "I'm a captain with Continental Airways. I've been flying for 12 years, 5 of them in command. I'm Captain Robert Edwards." He reached into his flight bag and pulled out his wallet. "Here are my credentials." He extended his federal pilot's license, issued by the FAA, complete with his photo, certification details, and security features, and his Continental Airways employee ID with his captain designation clearly printed. Warren took the documents and examined them with an expression that showed he had already decided they were fake before he even looked at them. He turned them over, held them up to the light, looked at Edwards' photo, then back at Edwards' face. After a long moment, Warren's verdict came with absolute certainty. "Those look fake to me. Hands behind your back now." Edwards' patience, which had been holding steady, cracked slightly. "Officer, those are federal documents. They're not fake. You can verify them through the airline. Call Continental Operations. Ask for Daniel Mendoza. He's the operations manager. He'll confirm I work here." Warren pulled handcuffs from his belt. "I said hands behind your back. You're under arrest for impersonation of an airline pilot and possession of fraudulent identification." Edwards took a step back, his hands coming up in a defensive gesture. "You can't be serious. Those IDs are real. I am a pilot. This is insane. Warren grabbed Edwards' arm and spun him around. The handcuffs clicked into place, tight enough that they dug into Edwards' wrists. Passengers nearby stopped walking. Several pulled out their phones and started recording. The scene was surreal. A man in a professional pilot's uniform being arrested in the middle of an airport terminal while travelers stared in shock. Warren pulled out his radio. "This is Warren. Terminal A near Gate 18. I've apprehended a suspect. Blackmail, fraudulent pilot uniform, fake credentials. Requesting supervisor backup." Captain Robert Edwards stood in handcuffs in the middle of Terminal A, and the humiliation of being treated like a criminal while wearing the uniform he had earned through years of dedication was almost unbearable. Across the terminal, the radio call reached Chief Security Officer Patricia Lee. Lee was 46 years old with 18 years of experience at DFW Airport. She knew the terminal inside out. She knew the airlines, the procedures, and most importantly, she knew the flight crews. She absolutely knew Captain Robert Edwards. Lee had seen Edwards pass through Terminal A hundreds of times over the past several years. She had watched him handle difficult passengers with patience, seen him help elderly travelers find their gates, witnessed him mentor younger pilots. She knew he was one of Continental's most reliable captains. When she heard Warren's radio call about arresting someone in a fraudulent pilot uniform, her first thought was that it must be a misunderstanding. When she heard the description, black male, captain's stripes, her stomach dropped. She grabbed her radio. "Warren, this is Chief Lee. Do not move the suspect. I'm coming to your location immediately. Do not process him. Stay exactly where you are." Lee walked quickly through the terminal. She reached Gate A 18 minutes after Warren's initial radio call. What she saw confirmed her worst fear. Captain Robert Edwards stood in handcuffs, his flight bag on the floor beside him, his expression controlled, but clearly frustrated. Warren stood next to him, with his chest puffed out like he had just accomplished something heroic. 3 passengers were recording with their phones. A small crowd had gathered. Lee walked straight up to Warren, and before he could open his mouth to explain, her voice cut through the terminal loud enough that everyone nearby could hear. "Why is Captain Edwards in handcuffs?" Warren's confident expression faltered. "Captain? Ma'am, this man was wearing a fake uniform and carrying fraudulent—" Lee cut him off. "That's Captain Robert Edwards, Continental Airways. 12 years with the airline, 5 as captain. I've seen him pass through this terminal at least 3 times a week for years. Why did you arrest him?" Warren's face went pale. I didn't know. I've been working here 2 weeks and I've never seen him before. The uniform looked suspicious. I thought—" "You thought?" Lee's voice got louder. "You've been here 2 weeks and you think you know every pilot at this airport? Do you have any idea how many pilots work out of this terminal? Did it occur to you to verify his credentials before you arrested him?" Warren tried again. "He had IDs, but I thought they were fake." "You thought they were fake based on what evidence?" Lee's voice was cold now. "Or did you think they were fake because you saw a black man in a captain's uniform and couldn't believe it was real?" Warren didn't have an answer. Lee turned to Edwards. "Captain Edwards, I am deeply sorry for what just happened. This should never have occurred." She looked at Warren. "Uncuff him. Now." Warren pulled out his keys with shaking hands and unlocked the handcuffs. Edwards brought his arms forward and rubbed his wrists where the metal had left red marks. Several passengers in the crowd started clapping. Lee's voice was ice. "Warren, go to my office immediately. Don't talk to anyone. Wait for me there." Warren opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but the look on Lee's face made him think better of it. He turned and walked toward the security offices with his head down. Lee turned back to Edwards. "Captain, again, I apologize. I'm suspending Warren immediately and opening a full investigation. His Bodycam recorded the entire interaction, and I'm going to review it personally." Edwards picked up his flight bag. "I appreciate that, Chief Lee, but an apology won't change what just happened. I was racially profiled and arrested in front of my colleagues and passengers. I'll be filing a formal complaint and I'll be contacting my attorney." Lee nodded. "I understand. You have every right. And for what it's worth, you'll have my full cooperation." Edwards walked away toward the crew entrance and Lee pulled out her radio to call her office. "This is Lee. I need Officer Scott Warren's personnel file, his body cam footage from the past hour, and every incident report he's filed since he started. I want it all on my desk in 15 minutes. Scott Warren's 14-day career in airport security was about to come to an end. Chief Security Officer Patricia Lee sat in her office 30 minutes after the incident and watched the body cam footage from Officer Scott Warren's confrontation with Captain Edwards. With every passing second, the situation looked worse. The footage started with Warren spotting Edwards walking through the terminal. The audio captured Warren muttering to himself before he even approached. "Who is this guy? Never seen him before." Then the confrontation began. Warren's aggressive tone from the first word, Edwards' calm explanation, and then the moment that made Lee close her eyes, Warren's voice, clear as day on the recording, asking, "Since when do they let people like you fly planes?" The footage continued, Edwards presenting his pilot's license and Continental Airways ID, Warren examining them and then saying, "Those look fake to me." Lee paused the video and sat back in her chair. 2 weeks. Warren had been employed for exactly 2 weeks, and he had just created a lawsuit that was going to cost the airport authority hundreds of thousands of dollars. She pulled up Warren's personnel file and started reviewing the incident reports he had filed since starting. What she found made her jaw tighten. In 14 days, Warren had filed 4 incident reports. Every single one involved a person of color. Day 3. Warren stopped a black woman at gate A24 and demanded to see her boarding pass 3 times because he didn't believe she was flying first class. The gate agent intervened and confirmed the woman's ticket was legitimate. Day 7. Warren questioned a Latino maintenance worker and demanded proof of employment, despite the man wearing a visible employee badge with his photo and name. Day 11. Warren detained a black airline employee at baggage claim for acting suspicious. The employee had been scanning luggage tags and directing bags to correct carousels. Her job. Warren called her supervisor to verify she worked there before letting her continue. And now, day 14, Warren arrested Captain Edwards for impersonation, 4 incidents, 14 days, all people of color, all legitimate passengers or employees. Lee picked up her phone and called the airport authority's legal department. The attorney listened to Lee's summary and asked for the body cam footage immediately. Then, "This is going to be a lawsuit. Captain Edwards has a spotless record, 12 years of experience, and video evidence of explicit racial bias. Prepare for a settlement in the 6 figures. Lee ended the call and pulled up Warren's employment contract. Racial discrimination, violation of equal treatment policies, false arrest. All grounds for immediate termination. She called Warren into her office. Warren walked in looking like he had spent the past hour trying to convince himself this would somehow blow over. He sat down across from Lee's desk. Lee didn't let him speak. "I've reviewed your body cam footage. I've reviewed every incident report you filed. I've spoken with legal. You're terminated, effective immediately." Warren's face went white. "Ma'am, I was just trying to do my job." "You arrested a decorated airline captain because you couldn't believe a black man could hold that position. You called his federal credentials fake. You made a racist statement on your own body cam, and your file shows this wasn't isolated. It was a pattern. Turn in your badge and body cam. Security will escort you out." Warren stood slowly, removed his badge and body cam, and placed them on Lee's desk. 2 security officers were waiting outside to escort him to the exit. His 2-week career was over. By that evening, the passenger videos had been uploaded to social media. The footage showed the entire confrontation from multiple angles, and the audio captured Warren's racist remark clearly. The story made local Dallas news by 6 p.m. and national news by the next morning. Captain Robert Edwards filed his federal lawsuit 3 weeks later. False arrest, racial profiling, violation of civil rights. The evidence was overwhelming. Body cam footage, 4 security camera angles, 3 passenger videos, and Warren's personnel file showing his pattern. The airport authority's legal team recommended immediate settlement. 14 months later, in December 2025, the settlement was finalized, $575,000. Edwards used $200,000 to establish a scholarship fund for aspiring black pilots, donated $150,000 to organizations supporting pilot diversity, and kept $225,000 as compensation for the humiliation he had endured. As of March 2026, Scott Warren is 28 years old and working retail, making $28,000 per year. The viral videos showing his racist statement have been viewed over 2.3 million times combined, and his name is permanently attached to one of the most publicized examples of racial profiling in airport security. Captain Robert Edwards is still flying for Continental Airways. In January 2026, he was promoted to senior training captain, now responsible for training new pilots. His father's advice, professionalism wins every time, had been proven correct. The lesson was expensive, public, and permanent. 2 weeks of employment doesn't make anyone an expert. Federal credentials issued by the FAA are not fake just because the person holding them is black. And security officers who let racial bias override evidence will lose their jobs, cost their employers hundreds of thousands of dollars, and become cautionary tales used in training programs nationwide. If you believe a professional pilot should be able to wear his uniform without being accused of impersonation, share this story. What reforms prevent racial profiling in airport security? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this reminded you that black excellence exists in every profession and assumptions based on race destroy careers, subscribe.